Captain Jake Harmon had seen many things in his life. As a seasoned officer in Earth's military, he had faced fierce battles, perilous missions, and countless dangers. But nothing had prepared him for the strange events that had been unfolding across the globe. People were reporting unusual experiences. Some said they had heard voices in their minds, soft whispers, like a breeze brushing past their ears. But these whispers weren't from anyone they knew. They were from someone or something else, and it was spreading like wildfire. Jake had been assigned to investigate these reports. At first, the military had thought it was just some kind of psychological anomaly, something caused by stress, fear, or maybe even some kind of new weapon. But as the number of incidents grew, and as people from different parts of the world started telling eerily similar stories, the situation quickly became far more serious. The reports said the voices were not just random thoughts. They were clear, precise, and often spoke in a language that seemed beyond human comprehension. And each person who heard the voices described the same thing. They felt an overwhelming sense of awe, a connection that seemed too deep to be understood. It was as if the voice was trying to communicate something important, something beyond the limits of their current understanding. Jake walked down the cold, metallic hallways of the underground military base, where he was briefed about the situation. His boots clicked against the floor with each step, the sound echoing in the empty space around him. He had been tasked with finding out what was going on and to stop it if it posed any threat to Earth's security. He had dealt with alien threats before. He had fought off invaders, met hostile species, and helped defend his planet. But this was different. There was no sign of violence, no visible enemy, just whispers. And that unsettled him more than anything. When Jake entered the command room, a group of officers were already waiting for him. Among them was Dr. Evelyn Clark, a leading expert in telepathy and advanced cognitive technologies. She had been studying the cases for weeks and was one of the few who believed that the voices weren't just a trick of the mind. She believed they were real, and they were coming from somewhere out there, somewhere beyond Earth. "Captain, Doctor," Clark greeted him, her tone serious but welcoming.
"I'm glad you're here."
"We need your expertise on the ground. This is unlike anything we've seen before." Jake nodded, his mind already racing with questions. "What exactly are we dealing with, Doctor?" She handed him a tablet with data collected from several reported cases. The reports were all too similar. People who had heard voices in their minds, who had been unable to explain the sensation. They all felt connected to something greater than themselves, a presence that was calm and reassuring, but also filled with power.
"Every person who has reported this experience claims to hear the same voice," Dr. Clark explained.
"And the voice always says the same thing. You are not alone."
Jake frowned.
"That's it? That's all?"
But the feeling it leaves behind is profound. It's as if they've been touched by something ancient, something far beyond human comprehension. The captain glanced at the tablet. The data showed a pattern, a series of mental connections that had spanned across the globe. What was once thought to be isolated incidents were beginning to form a larger picture. The people who had heard the voice didn't know each other, but they all shared a similar experience. And the voice wasn't just speaking randomly. It was guiding them, teaching them, as if trying to communicate something of great importance. "Is it a weapon?" Jake asked.
"Some kind of alien mind control?" Dr. Clark shook her head.
"No. There's no sign of mind control, no manipulation. What's happening here is something else. I believe the voice is reaching out to humanity, not to control, but to prepare us." Jake leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. He had faced strange threats before, but this was beyond anything he had ever dealt with. The idea of a voice speaking to people's minds, trying to prepare humanity for something, was almost too much to wrap his head around. "How do we stop it?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "Doctor..." Clark hesitated before answering. "We don't." At least not yet. We need to understand what's going on before we take any action.
That's why I've asked for your help. You've dealt with alien species before, Captain.
I need you to meet someone. Someone who may know more about these whispers.
Jake's curiosity was piqued. Who? Dr. Traldar. Clark gestured to the back of the room where a woman stood. She was tall with striking features, dark eyes that seemed to look right through him, and hair that shimmered like silver under the harsh lights. She wore a simple black suit, the kind of attire that could belong to anyone, but there was something different about her, something Jake couldn't quite place.
This is Arya, Dr. Clark introduced her.
She's not just anyone, she's different. Jake studied her for a moment. There was an air about her that felt almost otherworldly, but he couldn't put his finger on it. What makes her different? Arya stepped forward, her gaze locking with his. She didn't speak at first, but there was something in the way she looked at him that sent a chill down his spine. It was as though she was seeing more than just him. She was seeing deep into his mind, into his soul. "I know why you're here," she said, her voice calm and smooth, almost melodic. "And I know what's happening to your people." Jake blinked, his mind racing.
How do you know that? I've been watching, Arya replied.
"Watching your world, your species. I've been waiting for the right moment to reveal myself."
Jake took a step back, his instincts on high alert.
This wasn't just some stranger. This was someone who had information. Information that could change everything. But why now? Why was she here?
What do you mean you've been watching?
He asked, his tone sharp. Arya's gaze softened, and she placed a hand gently on his arm. The touch was light, but it sent a strange pulse through him, as if her very presence was stirring something deep inside him.
I am not entirely human, she said quietly. I am part of a species known as the Savara. We have been observing humanity for millennia, waiting for the right time to make ourselves known. Jake's heart skipped a beat.
Aliens? Real aliens? He had known of their existence. After all, he had fought against alien invaders before, but this was something else. This woman wasn't just an alien in the traditional sense. She was something more. The words she spoke next would echo in his mind for the rest of his life. "You are on the brink of something greater," she said, her voice filled with an unspoken weight. "Something you'll never forget." Before Jake could respond, she reached out with her hand, and just for a moment, their minds touched. It was like nothing he had ever experienced. He could feel her thoughts, her emotions, like a ripple across his own consciousness. There was a flood of sensations, calmness, power, knowledge, and an overwhelming sense of connection. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the connection was gone. Jake stepped back, his mind reeling from the experience. "What did you do to me?" he demanded, his voice shaky but firm. Arya smiled, a small, almost sad smile.
"I only gave you a glimpse, a taste of what's to come."
"The connection between us is not just a physical one. It is deeper than that."
You will come to understand it in time.
Jake's heart was racing. He didn't know what to think, what to believe. His mind was still spinning from the brief touch they had shared, and the words she had spoken echoed in his head. He wasn't sure if he could trust her. But one thing was clear. Whatever was happening, whatever the Savara were preparing humanity for, was far bigger than anything he had ever imagined. As he left the room, the whispers from earlier seemed to return, louder now. But this time, they weren't just random thoughts. They were clear. They were calling him.
You are not alone,
the voice whispered again, and this time, Jake knew it wasn't just a random phrase. It was a message, a warning, and he was about to be caught in something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. Jake spent the next few days trying to make sense of everything. His mind felt foggy, as if it was being pulled in different directions. He couldn't stop thinking about the encounter with Arya, the way her voice had echoed in his head, and the strange connection they had shared. There was something about her, something otherworldly. Her words, "You are on the brink of something greater," haunted him every waking moment. But what did she mean? And why did he feel as though he had heard those words before, in a place deep inside his own mind? As Jake stood in his office staring out the window at the bustling city below, the feeling of unease wouldn't go away. He had been called in to investigate strange mental intrusions, but this was no longer just a case to solve. Something bigger was happening, something beyond his understanding. His thoughts were interrupted when Dr. Pratt, Evelyn Clark, walked into the room. She looked more determined than usual, her face serious and focused. Jake had worked with her before, and despite the odd nature of the situation, he trusted her. "Captain," she began, "I think I figured out something important. It's about the voice, the one that's been speaking to people's minds." Jake turned, his curiosity piqued.
What have you found? I've been analyzing the patterns, and I believe the voice is not just speaking at random. It's directed.
It's targeted, she explained. It's been reaching out to people for a reason, and I think I know why. Jake raised an eyebrow.
Why?
Dr. Clark hesitated for a moment, glancing around as though checking to make sure no one was listening.
It's trying to prepare us for something. The voice isn't just about communication. It's about awakening a potential that's been hidden inside humanity for generations. Jake frowned.
Awakening potential? What do you mean by that? I think the voice is connecting with something deep inside us, our minds, our consciousness, she said. It's not just trying to communicate with us. It's unlocking a power that we don't fully understand yet. Jake leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. So what?
The voice is giving us some kind of ability?
Dr. Clark nodded. That's what I think. It's like a seed being planted inside each of us, a seed that's been dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to grow. And the people who are hearing the voice, and they're the ones who have the potential to awaken it. Jake's mind whirled.
You're saying the voice is...
Choosing people. Yes. I think the voice is trying to find those who can harness this power, Dr. Clark said.
And I believe you're one of them, Captain. The words hit Jake like a jolt. He had felt something strange during his encounter with Arya. A connection, yes, but also a strange sense of awareness. It was as though a part of him had been awakened, like a long-forgotten memory was bubbling to the surface. I don't know if I'm ready for something like this, Jake admitted. I'm not exactly special. Dr. Clark looked at him with a mixture of understanding and certainty.
You may not feel special, Captain, but the truth is, you've been chosen.
And there's something inside you, something buried deep, that's calling out, just like the others. Jake wasn't sure whether to feel honored or terrified. The weight of the situation was beginning to settle heavily on him. He had always been a soldier, trained to fight, to protect. But this was different. It wasn't about weapons or tactics. It was about something far more powerful, something that could change everything.
Where do we go from here?
Jake asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside his mind.
Doc Clark stood up, walking over to the large map on the wall.
I've been tracking the other cases, the people who have heard the voice.
The pattern is clear.
These people are not just random.
They're part of something bigger. They are linked. And I think that the voice is guiding them, bringing them together for a reason. Jake studied the map, which was filled with red dots marking locations all over the world. There were clusters of dots in places he would have never expected. Small towns, hidden islands, isolated areas. He could feel the weight of the connection between them, a connection that went beyond geography. It was a connection that pulled at something deeper. This isn't just about Earth, is it? Jake asked quietly.
Dr. Clark didn't answer immediately.
Instead, she turned toward him and said, I think it's about more than Earth. I think it's about the universe. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had always known that humanity was not alone in the vast expanse of the universe, but the idea that someone, was reaching out to them, guiding them toward something greater. That was beyond his comprehension. Who is doing this? Jake asked, his voice almost a whisper. Dr. Clark's eyes flickered to the side.
I don't know.
But I think it's someone or something who has been watching humanity for a very long time. Someone with immense power, someone who sees something in us that we don't even see in ourselves.
Jake felt a shiver of recognition at the thought. Arya had said something similar.
She had mentioned that the Savara, her people, had been watching humanity for centuries. But what was their purpose? What were they preparing humanity for? And why did Jake feel like he was at the center of it all?
I need to find out more about Arya, Jake said, standing up. She knows more than she's telling me.
Doc Clark nodded.
I think you're right. But be careful, Captain. The more you learn, the more dangerous this will become.
Whoever is behind this, whoever is trying to awaken us, they won't stop just because we ask nicely. Jake looked out the window again, his thoughts swirling. The weight of the situation felt heavier than ever. He had been a soldier his whole life, trained to fight and survive. But this wasn't about fighting an enemy. This was about something far more complex, something that could change humanity's place in the universe. Forever.
I'll find out what's going on, Jake said, his voice firm. But I need answers.
And I need to understand why this is happening now. As he walked out of the room, the whispers returned to his mind, louder this time, clearer. You are not alone. Jake stopped in his tracks, feeling the presence of the voice like a warm breath on the back of his neck. The connection was growing stronger, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. It was as if the voice was calling to him, drawing him toward something that would change everything he thought he knew. But the deeper he went into this mystery, the more he realized that the answers were not going to be easy to find. And the more he learned, the more he would understand that humanity's future was already being shaped. But would they be ready for the change that was coming?